Once there was a woodcutter with two children and their stepmother. The boy's name was Hansel, and the girl's name was Gretel. They lived so poorly that sometimes there was not even anything to eat. And then one evening he lay in bed, pondering how to feed the children further. His wife advised him to have children in the forest, light a fire, give a piece of bread each and leave them there, not all four of them die of hunger. But the woodcutter did not agree. And until then, his wife persuaded him that he finally agreed. And the children, because of hunger, also could not sleep and heard everything that their stepmother said to their father. And when the parents fell asleep, Hansel secretly rushed out of the house. The moon was shining brightly, and the white stones glittered like coins. Hansel pocketed as many of them as he could fit. Then he returned home and the children went to bed. In the morning, the stepmother came to the children, gave each of them a piece of bread, and they all went to the forest together. On the way, Hansel threw out white stones one by one. When they arrived at the clearing, my father began to light a fire. He ordered the children to sit near the fire and make sure that it didn't go out, while they and their stepmother would go for more firewood. They sat, tired, and fell fast asleep. When the children woke up, it was a dark night all around. And when a full month had risen in the sky, Hansel took his sister by the hand and went, looking for the way through the pebbles, which glittered like new coins, and showed them the way. They walked all night long, and at dawn they came to their father's house. Some time passed, and the children again heard how the stepmother one night began to beg their father to get rid of the children. He refused, but his wife did not want to listen to him. She cursed and expressed all sorts of reproaches to him. When the parents fell asleep, Hansel, like the last time, wanted to collect stones, but the stepmother locked the door and the boy could not leave the house. Early in the morning, the children were given a piece of bread each, even less than the previous time. On the way to the forest, Hansel shredded his piece in his pocket and threw the crumbs on the ground. The stepmother took them even further into the forest. Again a big fire was lit, and the father ordered the children to watch the fire while they and their stepmother chopped some more wood. When lunchtime came, Gretel shared her piece of bread with Hansel. And they fell asleep. We woke up when the dark night fell. And then a month came up, and they got together on their way, but they could not find a single crumbs, because thousands of birds fluttering in the forest had long been eating those crumbs. So the children walked for a very long time, but they could not get out of the forest. Suddenly, the road led them to the hut. Coming closer, the children saw that the house was all built of bread and biscuits, and the windows were made of pure sugar. Hansel reached up and broke off a piece of the roof, while Gretel went to the window and began gnawing at its windows. And then the door in the hut opened wide, and the old woman came out, leaning on a crutch. Hansel and Gretel were so scared that they even dropped their tidbits from their hands. And the old woman was kind and invited them to her hut. There was already abundant food on the table: milk, cookies, apples, and nuts. After dinner, the old woman made 2 clean beds for the children, and Hansel and her sister thought they were in heaven. But the old woman only pretended to be affectionate, but in fact she was an evil witch, who built her bread hut for this purpose in order to lure children. Early in the morning, while the children were sleeping, she took Hansel and put him in a small cage. And she ordered her sister to do everything that the wicked witch demanded of her. The old woman decided to fatten the boy in order to eat him later. So Gretel began to cook the most delicious food for Hansel, and she herself got nothing but leftovers. Some time passed, and the boy did not get fat. Then the old woman did not want to wait any longer, and decided to cook and eat Hansel. She ordered Gretel to light the stove and apply water. When the stove warmed up, the old woman ordered her to climb into the stove and see if it was hot enough. So she wanted to push the girl into the fire and bake her. But Gretel knew what was on her mind. She said that she did not know how to get in there, and asked the witch to show herself. The old woman got angry and climbed into the oven. Then Gretel pushed her and slammed the shutter behind the witch. Wow, how terribly the old woman hauled them. Gretel, meanwhile, rushed to Hansel and opened the cage. Having freed their brother, they went to the witch's room, in which there were boxes of pearls and precious stones in all corners, filled their pockets with them, and went home. For several days the children were looking for their way back. The forest seemed more and more familiar, and at last they saw their father's house in the distance. How glad he was to see his children alive. Hansel and Gretel poured on the floor all the pearls and gems they had taken from the witch. There was no need to think about food. And they began to live, live, and rejoice. And the father drove the evil stepmother out of the house. Once upon a time, a cunning and narcissistic fox lived in a dense forest. She deceived everyone, so none of the animals trusted her and did not want to be friends with her. Soon the fox got tired of being alone, and she invited her neighbor Crane to dinner. At first, the crane refused, remembering that the fox cannot be trusted. But the fox convinced him, saying that except for him, none of the animals wants to be friends with her. And most importantly, the fox invited him to become best friends. Crane was glad of this invitation, and after a while went to visit. The fox's soup was very aromatic. After setting the table, she sprinkled the food into large plates. The fox invited the crane to the table, and began to eat her soup with pleasure. But the crane couldn't taste it out of such a flat dish. He unsuccessfully banged his beak on the plate, and in the end remained hungry. The crane was upset, thinking that the fox was very inattentive to him. But he was a guest at her house, so he did not say anything about his resentment. Meanwhile, the fox finished the soup to the last drop. Seeing that the crane was about to leave, she asked in disbelief if he liked the dinner.
No.
The crane politely said goodbye and went home hungry and upset. After a while, the crane decided to teach the fox a good lesson. He went to his girlfriend and politely invited her to dinner. Lisa was very happy with the offer and agreed. Having prepared dinner, the crane took out 2 tall and narrow jugs for himself and the fox. He set the table and put the food in the jugs. By this time the fox had come. She was very hungry. The crane invited the guest to the table, and the friends proceeded to dinner. The fox tried to eat from a narrow jug, but nothing came of it, because the vessel was too narrow. Meanwhile, the crane ate with ease with its long beak. When he finished, he saw the fox trying unsuccessfully to eat. Crane asked if she liked the dinner. But the fox replied that she could not eat anything due to the fact that the jug was too narrow and long. The crane was expecting a similar answer. He reminded the fox that he had left her house hungry because the plate was too flat. And then she realized her mistake. She felt ashamed that she was so inattentive to her neighbor. Lisa apologized and said that she could not even think that he would not be able to eat from such a plate. Crane forgave her and said that henceforth they need to remember their differences. Having said this, he brought a large plate from which the guest could easily eat her dinner. When it was time to say goodbye, the fox got an idea. She asked the crane to take one of his jugs to his home, so that he could easily dine with the fox. The neighbor liked this idea. He praised the fox, saying that if she uses her cunning and ingenuity for good deeds, she will have many friends. The fox and the crane laughed merrily. They have been best friends ever since. After some time, the crane came to say goodbye to its neighbor before heading to warmer lands. Left alone, the fox got bored. But she never forgot the words of the crane. Since then, the fox stopped thinking only about herself and found real friends among other animals in the forest.